Eros floated through the door into the medical bay. He saw the casket. Sima was inside, her head pressed against the view window. Floating up to it, he looked at the readout. She was being kept alive, although it was doing little more than maintaining her. Without better care, she would die. The Majestic was the only hope. Although the Thargoids had her well and truly pinned, it would not escape, even if its command structure came to its senses. Eros opened the casket and slid the door away. Sima slowly opened her eyes. Everything about the look on her face said she knew what was happening. Eros looked down at the shackle. She spoke quietly. "Don't let me die a slave, Eros." I won't. He had with him his toolkit. Her shackles were always on his mind. He knew that it was all he could do for her, to free her of the binds. They had both loosened during the shutdown pulse, but without her moving her arms, she remained bound. Luckily, he could get a separator into the small gaps. He began pumping the device, which slowly twisted and malformed the metal. After 10 minutes of fighting, he finally freed one of her hands. She placed it on his shoulder. Eros is fine. It's fine. Just let me see the stars. Anything you want, Sima." He held on to her and slowly glided around the corridors and to the cockpit. As he did, he saw a shadow pass over the ship. "Close your eyes, Sima," he said softly. She was barely conscious, her eyes already closed. "Please, just leave us alone. We're no threat to you," he said, as though the Thargoid that loomed close outside could understand. It paused and vibrated its 4 remaining petals and rotated, closing them in towards its core. It drifted upwards and flew back towards the Majestic. "Okay, Sima, open your eyes." She slowly cracked them and began to look around. "Eros, don't blame yourself. I know you will, so please don't. I'm glad we got to know you, and I'm sorry I can't fly with you anymore." Without another word, she closed her eyes and stopped breathing. Eros held on to her and began to weep. A single life blinked into the nothingness. At that same moment, behind them, the Majestic cracked in half and then exploded. It seemed pale in comparison. Eros began to hear the hull being peppered by small pieces of shrapnel. Ahead of him was the planet, the asp being slowly propelled towards it by a combination of gravity and being pockmarked by the explosion. Eros drifted with Sima to the lowered cockpit section, and he placed her into the flight seat. He activated the escape pod, which caused the seat to wrap around her in a casket, and held her in place. Eros pushed back upwards to the command seat and strapped himself in. There was only silence and a sound of death rattling at the rear. An interceptor returned, placing itself between the asp and the planet. It opened its petals and scanned the ship, and paused for a few moments. The gill-like structures on its petals turned from red to a green-yellow, and it began to fold them back once more into its core. Eros looked down at his hands and his flight suit. He was covered in Sima's blood. He wondered for a moment what it looked like to the alien outside. Did it think Eros had killed her? Did it have any concept of loss? Everything Eros had been told suggested they didn't really have a social structure further than that of bees or ants. Scouts and interceptors were by all means drones, and, as such, expendable. More logical was that the Thargoid knew the asp was not a threat. "Frameshift anomaly detected," Celeste announced. With it, all but the Thargoid that tracked them snapped into witch space. The Thargoid rotated 180 degrees to face the planet and began to slowly accelerate. When reaching roughly 5 kilometers distant, it turned once more to face the asp. Eros watched it through sore eyes, confused as what it was doing. He had assumed it was there to finish him off and leave, although apparently not quite yet. The planet grew ever larger and was now filling most of the view. The Thargoid approached once more, this time stopping what seemed like inches away from the cockpit. Eros felt his instincts kick in, telling him to either attack or run. To him, there was basically only silence, loss, and a giant alien. The single eye-like core structure, a dancing, swirling object that made it difficult to make out whether it was a cockpit or just an organic structure, He felt a small jolt as it pressed against the armored glass. Eros suddenly sat upright. The Thargoid responded by backing away slightly, and then nudging the asp once more. Was it trying to communicate? Eros raised its hand and made a motion as if to say, "Move back," pushing the palm of his hand towards it. The Thargoid responded by drifting backwards. "Celeste, bring all systems online except the weapons systems." As the ship responded, its retrothrusters began to sputter and fire, slowly bringing the ship's velocity under control. The Thargoid maintained a distance, as though watching an injured animal.